What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am here with the NPL Season 7 draft analysis for your Toronto Staraptors, looking to make a name for ourselves this season in the NPL with what promises to be a very, very difficult league to play in this season. Lots of really good players. We did lose Iron Flash Gaming, we lost Chrebet for the win, we lost Cloud Envy to the minors as well as Carney to the minors, but we picked up some really good coaches, including Monatui, including the Verd, including, why am I drawing a blank on the other minors coach that was promoted? It was Rob. We also picked up Rob, we picked up Cheese Boy coming back for this summer season, so it is looking to be a very challenging season for sure, but I am definitely looking forward to it. Now, the draft here that I'm going to be talking about is pretty unique. I really wanted to use the mega that I'm building around here for this draft, and it's not really a mega that you see too often, I guess, but because the NPL was a points-based draft this season, it was something I simply could not pass up. It just looks really, really good on paper, and with proper support, I think it really could put in a lot of work, and that is Mega Houndoom. So this is going to be a draft analysis based around a draft that I made around Mega Houndoom, meaning that we're going to have a little bit of sun, and we're going to have a little bit of fast, strong, dark fire puppy dog to deal with. So it's going to be pretty fun here. So let's just go ahead and hop right on into this. Hopefully this won't be too terribly long, but draft analyses tend to be pretty long, so going to try to keep it under half hour at least if I can, but let's just jump on in. So in addition to the Mega Houndoom, it's not going to be my round 1 pick, but it's actually down here at round 11, so I'll just spoil that now. I'll talk more about it whenever we get there. But surrounding the Mega Houndoom, what I really wanted to have was at least 2 Pokemon that were both fast and able to pretty easily have a move slot available to run Sunny Day, because Mega Houndoom obviously is best whenever it is in the sun due to its solar power ability, essentially giving it a free nuke button versus anything that tries to switch in. Fun fact, even Blissey is potentially OHKO'd by a +2 Fire Blast in the sun from Mega Houndoom, so that's pretty crazy there for sure. But I wanted to have a couple mons like that. There's several possibilities that come to mind there, but the most notable one really left me with 2 options. I could have done either Jirachi or Mew with the number 1 overall pick for me. I was number 5 in the draft order, so this was number 5. Some really powerful Pokemon like Mega Lati, Mega Latios specifically, Mega Kang, Mega Guard, and Mega Mawile all got taken before it got to me, and I really didn't want to go round 1 Mega Houndoom, obviously, so we're going to be actually the first overall non-Mega pick in the draft, which is pretty cool, and I was debating between Mew and Jirachi, but ultimately I did decide on Jirachi just because I really think it's one of the best, if not the best, non-mega in the format this generation, with steel types being so important and also having that really crucial base 100 speed for a defensive Pokemon, or a Pokemon that can be defensive. It's just the staple bulky offensive Pokemon and very, very easy to build a team around. So I wanted to start the draft off this season with the Jirachi, and with the Jirachi I was really, really hoping it could have something like Garchomp, because Jirachi Garchomp, that core is disgusting defensively and offensively, especially when you tack on a Mega Houndoom at the end. That is something that you do not want to deal with if you are an opponent, but unfortunately, that actually ends up getting sniped from me, so we're actually going to end up building around a core of Jirachi and Terrakion. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit. You already know, at least the majority of you probably already know what Jirachi does in the format. It basically does everything, especially if it has a Z Crystal, but spoilers, not going to make Jirachi my Z Captain here. It's just very, very good overall. It can be both offensive and defensive and run a variety of sets. Offensively, it's very good as a Calm Mind user, as well as just the Flinch Maestro. That is something that I would love to take advantage of here while I have Jirachi on my team. But yeah, so really, really cool overall. Definitely a mon that I'm looking forward to use again. I don't really know what I'm going to nickname all these Pokemon, although Jirachi will of course be the Duke, because that's what I named it in my Season 4 run when I last had Jirachi, and I will definitely be maintaining that nickname here because it was a pretty appropriate nickname if you know the backstory on it. So yeah, so Jirachi really cool to build around with the Terrakion. Now Terrakion is going to be a physical breaker on my team, also very important for that role, as well as being a good speed tier. I believe it's like base 106 or 108, which is pretty clutch. I think anything above 100 is solid this gen. Everything above 110 is very, very good this gen. So I'm going to try to pick up a variety of speed tiers that are above 110 just to help out in terms of, I guess, keeping up with the metagame. The draft metagame is becoming so offensive, so speed dependent that it's tough to really keep up with that, and I can't really draft a ton of high tier bulk because that high tier bulk that I would have to take early in the draft is typically lower speed tier, meaning I'm not going to get the good high speed tier stuff later on, putting me at a disadvantage immediately in my opinion. So I do think it was in my best interest to draft more of the offensive Pokemon earlier in the draft, as well as potentially things that can double as defensive Pokemon, as in the Jirachi can certainly be defensive and offensive. Terrakion not so much, but the rest of my draft I believe can be used both offensively or defensively, which I think is a very strong asset to have throughout the entire draft. So I'm going to go ahead and give a warning now. This draft is not going to look very conventional. It's going to look like it's actually not very good on paper, but I firmly believe it's actually very solid, and it doesn't have any flashy Pokemon on it, and I'm okay with that, quite honestly, because the team is so versatile, has a lot of momentum and appropriate breakers, that I think it's going to still be solid, despite the fact that it is not very flashy. So, we already talked about Jirachi. Terrakion, powerful breaker like I already said. Also a Stealth Rocker, so I'm getting 2 Stealth Rockers here right off the bat. And also just a Pokemon that is really, really hard to prep for, especially if I choose to make my Z-Crystal user, because the NPL is only allowing 1 Z-Crystal holder throughout this season. And Terrakion certainly would be a good option for that if push comes to shove. So, solid overall, and we're building the team around the Jirachi. Terrakion with the idea of picking up Mega Houndoom in round 11. So, for round 3, we have the Chrebet. This is a very important mon for this team, because Chrebet is one of the fastest Pokemon in the game that can learn Sunny Day as well as Defog. I needed a Hazard Remover. I needed a Pokemon that was resistant to ground, in this case immune to it, because of Mega Houndoom, Jirachi, and Terrakion all being weak to ground. So that was pretty crucial. I also felt that the poison typing was nice here, as it gives me a very nice fighting switch in. And yeah, so it also has momentum. Obviously, the momentum is very important, I feel, in conjunction with the Jirachi. That combination picking up momentum on a lot of mons, and you'll see another momentum mon coming up here soon. It's also very powerful with Banded Brave Bird, as well as having access to Taunt, Super Fang. I believe it gets Haze, obviously Ruse. It gets a lot of stuff that's really useful overall. Not your ideal round 3 pick. And that's where this draft becomes a little unconventional, where I pick up the Chrebet as early as round 3, and I can do that because I'm picking my Mega in round 11. I can make sure I get a Pokemon that is so essential to my draft by picking it up in round 3 with the Mega coming in at round 11. So Chrebet at round 3 is very weird, I realize that, but that was intentional, definitely, because it is so essential, being that high speed tier that outspaces almost everything, having access to Sunny Day, having access to momentum, and of course Defog, probably the most important role for the Chrebet. So just something that I really wanted on my team, and we picked it up here in round 3. So then in round 4 we get another momentum mon, another bulky offensive mon. Chrebet can be used both offensively and defensively, as well as this Pokemon, the Rotom Wash. So this picks up another ground immunity, which is really, really nice to help out the Terrakion, Jirachi, and Mega Houndoom. Also being a Volt Switch user, as well as being generally good both defensively and offensively. Now, one thing I will say, Rotom Wash is a Pokemon that I think did get nerfed a little bit this gen with the nerf of burn damage. That said, I think that it's still solid in the format, just because the extra side effect of burn, lowering the attack of an opponent, is very, very useful still for Rotom, even despite the fact that the opponents will take half the damage they used to from the burn itself. Plus, the combination of Volt Switch and Hydro is honestly really, really good. It's not easy for opponents to switch into that combination. The only way, I believe, to switch into both is if you are a Dragon or a Grass type, and in either case you can simply tack on HP Ice if I'm going to make it an offensive set. So that works out pretty well there for sure. So Rotom is nice for this team. It just fits that mold of picking up momentum for me, being usable both offensively and defensively, and having the high speed tier. So you can take a look at the speed tiers here on my draft so far. Mega Houndoom 115, Jirachi 100, Terrakion like 106, 108. Chrebet's like 135, something way up there. Rotom Wash is in the high 80s, maybe low 90s. All this stuff is really fast. I'm not picking up stuff that is slow, and that is really important, I feel, this generation, as I've already iterated several times. So, that's it for Rotom Wash. I'm going to talk more about the entire draft as a whole here when I get to the end of all this. But next up is the Serperior at round 5. Another fast Pokemon. This one is above base 110. I think it's like 113. Overall, solid. It's not as versatile, I would say, as things like the Jirachi would be. Or even as versatile as things like Rotom Wash to an extent, or even Chrebet, but it's still solid at what it does. It doesn't have the best coverage, but Leaf Storm plus Hidden Power is typically all you need, as well as having access to Dual Screens, Taunt, Leech Seed, Sub, Recovery, all these things that are really important for a grounded grass type. And fun fact, at this point in the draft, we had just seen some of the best grass types. Did I say grounded? I meant grounded grass type. I'm not sure if I said that, but at this point in the draft, we had seen several grass types go pretty much back to back. We saw Celebi go to Merc. We saw the Shaman go to Shoddy, and those were unarguably probably the best two pure grass types, or even grass types that were still resistant to Thousand Arrows. Those were probably the two best, so it pretty much came down to me as to whether or not I wanted to get a good grass type that would be good against Thousand Arrows, against Zygardes, or if I wanted to, I guess, wait and maybe get one that's a little bit subpar later in the draft. And I was not going to take that risk because Zygarde is such an immense threat to my team. Thousand Arrows, as you can see, hits my entire team that I've drafted so far. I needed a grass type, and that was going to be Serperior here. So I get the high base speed as well as all the moves that I've already mentioned before, as well as being a strong special sweeper. It does require a turn of setup to be a threat, but once that Leaf Storm gets off, it's a big threat for opponents to deal with. Most teams don't have the synergy to entirely wall out a Serperior, especially considering one of the later picks in the draft that is unarguably not even... I don't know, it's one of the better responses to Serperior, so I felt like most opponents wouldn't be able to really deal with it too well. So yeah, overall just pretty good on my team, I think, especially considering what I have in mind here for the future rounds. So next up is in round 6, I picked up Cofagrigus. This was essentially here because I know there's a Mega Lopunny that I might have to play, and I want to have something to deal with said Mega Lopunny. So I do pick up the Cofagrigus, basically to help with things like that, also to help against the potential Mega Kangaskhan that may or may not be in my division. They weren't released at this point, so it was entirely just in case I needed to have the probably one of the best responses to both of those two Pokemon in the Cofagrigus. This is obviously a very slow speed tier, but that's okay because in my opinion it is one of the best Trick Room setters that can also take advantage of the Trick Room on its own. So this is a Pokemon that helps against a couple of the dawning Trick Room teams that were forming around the league. Maddie Brelic and Togavor both were drafting what appeared to be likely Trick Room teams, so I wanted to have some Pokemon that were low enough to really abuse that, and Cofagrigus was the first of those Pokemon to help against teams like that. So just the Ghost type, it's a nice spin blocker when I do get my Rocks up, as I do already have two very good Rockers on this draft, and I plan to get at least one more and potentially Spikes later on depending on what becomes available. So, nice as a spin blocker. Also could potentially use it for Z-Memento if I want to make it my Z-Move user. It just kind of depended on how the rest of the draft played out, as there were some other things that I had my eyes on. If I could afford them or if they fell to me, I would certainly have taken them. So, yeah, so that's about it on the Cofagrigus. Just good defensively. It's my general defensive pivot at this point. I was looking a little bit frail at this stage in the draft. While I did have a lot of mons that could be used defensively, I didn't really have that tank. I didn't have things that could just take any one big hit if I really needed to. I didn't have anything that really wanted to switch into a powerful normal type coverage that also had knockoff, that kind of thing. I guess Cough still doesn't do that too well, but at least with Culpa Berry it could do it pretty well. I don't know. It's just good overall, I think, on this draft. So next up is the Goodra in round this is round 7. So this is one of those mons that I was talking about earlier being one of the better responses to Serperior due to the Sap Sipper ability, preventing it from ever getting any sort of boost. So yeah, Goodra is nice for just as a dragon, because what I learned in the PPL here is that having a dragon on your team is pretty essential to deal with some of the common fire threats, because fire threats, especially now in Gen 7, if they are holding a Z Crystal, have easy access to grass moves no matter what they are. Even if they just got Solar Beam in the past, now they get Bloom Doom with a Z Crystal. So I really think a dragon is absolutely essential this gen. And Goodra is obviously a pretty fat dragon, so that does help there on that front. It also helps with my minor electric weakness at this point. I do have Serperior that can resist it, but of course Goodra certainly helps with that a lot. It's also a pretty good speed tier considering how fat it is. I believe it's base 80, which is really nice. It's also, yeah, you guys already know how Goodra's stats are distributed. It's one of the fattest special tanks around, and it can be used offensively as well with a Choice Scarf or even just straight up with specs. His base 80 is nothing to laugh at, and opponents will have Pokemon that are below base 80, and that's really the true benefit in having all of these Pokemon that are at high base speeds. I can seriously abuse teams that are lower than those base speeds and not already built around Trick Room. So Goodra certainly fits that mold pretty well. So then next up in round 8, I have the Aromatisse, which is a Pokemon I did not want. I'm going to say it right now, I did not want Aromatisse. But that's what I'm stuck with. I really wanted Florges, to be honest. Even though Florges and Goodra may seem a little bit redundant being special tanks, Florges is just better than Aromatisse pretty much in every way. But unfortunately, the Florges got sniped. So really, that's the second key snipe, I think, of this draft that has made this look a little bit clunky potentially. But I think it all came together pretty well in the end, which of course I'll talk about here a little bit later. But the Aromatisse does fill a pretty key role as a cleric as well as a Wish Passer to help out the Goodra, Cofagrigus, and Rotom Wash pretty much stay alive. It becomes the second Wish Passer on my team along with the Jirachi, so if I want to run Double Wish, I can. That was something that I did want to try to incorporate in my draft if I could, but it wasn't really essential necessarily. Aromatisse isn't really something I think I'll bring too often, honestly, but having the fairy is pretty key when there's a powerful dragon to be concerned with, and I've heard around from people who have used the Aromatisse, like Trev, mostly Trev, that it's actually pretty decent, and obviously it's very, very slow, so it can take advantage of Trick Room teams whenever I do encounter them. So another Pokemon to really help out with that along with the Cofagrigus. It also can't be taunted, which is pretty nice, so for a Wish Passer, that's pretty clutch, I think. So next up is in round 9, the Swampert. Now this is a Pokemon I've wanted to use in draft format for quite a while. It's my ground type. I needed something to be immune to electric moves because they're spooky electric types this gen. Tapu Koko and Circuitry are ow. Unfortunately, both of those do have access to grass moves to hit the Swampert, but at least they can't just run a Choice Scarf and Volt Switch around my entire team for free this way. So Swampert does help with that a little bit. It's also surprisingly powerful. I did use Mega Swampert in the Major PL when I took over a team there for a few weeks, and while I didn't really enjoy the rain option on that team, I really did see a lot of benefit to bringing Swampert. It does have a lot of niches on different builds, so I do think that the regular Swampert could be nice, especially when it has access to all kinds of different items because it's not the Mega Evolution. So Swampert could be nice. It's also my third rocker. It's a phaser. It has access to tons of actually really good coverage both on the physical and special sides, as well as having access to both a counter and mirror coat. So it could do a lot of stuff, and I've been pretty impressed by Monatui's use of Swampert in the PPL, and I really think it has some potential in this gen. I think it has potential. I think it's better this gen than it's been in the past. Obviously not as good as it was in 4th gen when it was actually OU, but in 5th gen it was hardly ever used in higher tiers. In 6th gen it was not used in draft format like at all. So this is something that I've been wanting to use for a while, and it fit the team pretty well, so I decided to go ahead and pick it up to patch up that weakness to electric attacks, as well as to pick up just a second bulky water, maybe to take some pressure off of Rotom if I happen to face a team that would pressure Rotom a lot. So yeah, Swampert's pretty good overall, I think, on the draft. It filled a very crucial role. So yeah, so now let's talk about what we have so far. So we have the Jirachi, Terrakion, Chrebet, Rotom Wash, Serp for basically offensive momentum. And then we have the Cofagrigus, Goodra, Aromatisse, Swampert to help me deal with things almost always defensively, but then again, all of these Pokemon can be used offensively if need be, and that is very nice on this draft for sure. Now, if you'll notice between the Cofagrigus, Goodra, Aromatisse, and Swampert, that is quite a bit weak to Toxic and Toxic Spikes. So we need to find a way to deal with that. And the first thing that comes to mind for most people would be, hey, we should pick up a Grounded Poison here. We still have 13 points remaining. Technically only 3 if we count the Mega Houndoom coming at the end. I could pick up a Grounded Poison for 3 points. But if you look at the Grounded Poisons that are worth 3 points, I probably would never bring any of them. So, how do I fix this problem? Well, there's this little Pokemon worth 3 points. That is a menace in its respective tier because it hits frickin' hard when it's poison, and its name is Zangoose. The goose is loose here in this draft. So we have the Zangoose picking up the final slot here before we pick up the Mega Houndoom, and the Zangoose is a huge threat. Just massive. If you look at the calcs against just any of your favorite physical walls, they're probably 2-hit KO'd by Zangoose. And the best part about this is with my team being so weak to Toxic Spikes, I don't have to run Toxic Orb on Zangoose. I can bring any item I want. And my opponent has to deal with it. If they're going to put T-Spikes on the field to wear down my walls, to wear down my cores, they're going to have to deal with the Zangoose. That might be Choice Scarfed. It might be Choice Banded. They might just have some deaths on their team. Not faints. They might just lose Pokemon. They might die. They won't faint. They will die to Zangoose because it hits so hard. So that is something that I'm really excited to use here on this team. It patches up that crucial weakness, I think. I think without Zangoose, my team was definitely weak to T-Spikes. But because of Zangoose, they have to think twice. They have absolutely no reason not to think twice about putting up T-Spikes when there's a Zangoose on my side of the field. And I'm not going to lie, I'm probably going to bring it more often than not throughout the season because of how weak my team is to T-Spikes. So, yeah, Zangoose is fun. It's fun to use. The calcs are hilarious, and I just can't wait to make my opponents sweat themselves a little bit when they actually see it at team preview, thinking I wouldn't actually bring up a Mon that's worth 3 points. Trust me, I've had Ursaring on my team before, and I brought it many times. I am not afraid to bring Zangoose. It's actually better than Ursaring. So, yeah, looking forward to using that for sure. It has access to a ton of coverage moves. Just go over to Bulbapedia right now for yourselves and take a look at all the coverage moves that Zangoose gets. It's actually insane. It gets all the elemental punches, close combat, knockoff, quick attack, facade, as well as having access to Swords Dance, and I think Bulk Up as well. It gets pretty much everything it needs to be an absolute monster. I'm actually a little surprised it's such a low tier, especially considering its speed stat is base 90. That's not slow, especially in this meta. So, yeah, Zangoose is pretty cool. I'm excited to use that thing for sure. So last up, round 11, like I've already said, is the Mega Houndoom, and we do have at least 2. I think Serperior also gets Sunny Day. I don't know off the top of my head, but for sure we have the Jirachi and Chrebet that can use Sunny Day. I think the Goodra gets Sunny Day. I would not be surprised if Aromatisse gets Sunny Day. Most fairies do. Probably the Serperior gets Sunny Day. Obviously Mega Doom gets Sunny Day on its own. So I have a lot of ways to manually set up the sun for Mega Houndoom to be an absolute monster for my opponents to deal with. And it also has access to that nice Sucker Punch to give me a little more priority. Priority on my team isn't the best, but between Sucker Punch on Mega Houndoom, Quick Attack Zangoose, which is stab boosted, as well as, let's see, we have Quick Attack Terrakion, and I thought I had one more priority user. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I might not. I think Rotom might get Sucker Punch. I think Rotom actually gets Sucker Punch. So that'd be another priority user, but yeah, that certainly comes in clutch. I believe that's also boosted by Solar Power. I don't think it's only special moves, but I'll have to check in on that as well. But yeah, with all the Sun support, Mega Houndoom can simply break teams down, and that's certainly something that I'm looking forward to here. So looking at the entire draft as a whole, I've already outlined some of the weaknesses to it, and I'm sure some of the coaches are enjoying that I've outlined some of the weaknesses to it. But here's the thing. The draft is built in such a way that it abuses people who try to abuse my weaknesses. So, good luck, have fun to the fellow coaches who are watching and want to try to use those same strategies against me, because Zangoose will go ham on your team and it'll be great. So, there's your warning on that, I guess. But, yeah, so overall the draft is basically built around the pseudo-sun, or manual sun, as well as momentum and defensive Pokemon that can all be used offensively in some capacity, as well as offensive Pokemon that in a sense can also be used defensively. Even if I invest defensively in Mega Doom, I think it could take hits pretty well, especially when supported by Double Wish. I could also see a defensive Terrakion potentially becoming a thing, maybe a little less likely. Zangoose will never be defensive, but yeah, Terrakion and Zangoose are probably the two that really wouldn't want to be defensive. Everything else can go either way relatively easily, I feel, and I think that makes the draft very versatile, and that's what I was going for. A versatile draft with potent breakers that are super hard to prep for. Mega Houndoom, you can't really prep for attacks that can simply OHKO Blissey at +2. You really can't prep for that unless you outspeed it, so I'll be able to at least net KOs before they try to check me, and that's good enough for me. I need to be able to maintain the momentum and get those free KOs off of the momentum, which Terrakion can do with the Z Crystal. I guess I forgot to reveal that. So Terrakion is my Z Crystal holder, my Z captain on this team. Not really surprising considering what I actually picked up. It really only came down to Terrakion versus Jirachi, and Terrakion just becomes that much better with the Z Crystal, especially when I don't have to rely on Stone Edge, at least the first time I click it. So I can always click Continental Crush first, which is pretty nice. So having the Z Terrakion, having the Mega Houndoom, and even the Zangoose as my 3 primary breakers can, I think, make this team shine, and can really abuse the fact that there is the momentum core that was drafted early on with the Jirachi, Chrebet, Rotom Wash that I'll bring almost every single week, and probably will almost every single week have those momentum moves on them. So yeah, so that's about all I have to say on this. I did keep it pretty short. 25 minutes is actually not too bad, considering what a draft analysis could typically be. I could have gone into much more detail, but I don't think people are interested in hearing me talk for like 45 minutes or whatever, so I tried to keep it pretty brief and not go into too much detail on stuff that you probably already know. I know a lot of the people that watch my draft videos are already pretty adept in the format and know a lot about it, know a lot about what these different mons do. And I don't have any new Pokemon on this team necessarily, at least new to this generation, so not a whole lot of new stuff to really talk about, but there is stuff that I've never used before in draft format that I'm certainly excited to, most notably the Zangoose and Mega Houndoom, as well as the Swampert. Chrebet seems pretty fun to use too, and the Cofagrigus is the other one that I'm pretty excited to use. So certainly looking forward to that. Let me know in the comments what you think about this draft. It's very unconventional, like I said before. Let me know if you think that's a good thing, a bad thing, how you think maybe it could improve, what you think its weaknesses are that I might not have covered, what you think its strengths are that I might not have covered. I'll be interested in seeing anything that you have to say on that, and of course I will respond accordingly. So thanks again for watching, guys. Week 1 uploads are going to be coming up here on July the 16th, so we got a little bit of time on that, but yeah, so we got about a little over a week and a half, I think, at this point. So yeah, so I hope you're looking forward to that, and without further ado, I will see you all next time as we take on Trev, CL, and the Houston Toxapexids in week 1 on July 16th. See you then. Peace.